Awakening from the deep. The void between stars held no concept of time. For the UNSS Harbinger, drifting in the darkness beyond charted space, decades passed in utter silence. Once humanity's mightiest warship, the crown jewel of the United Nations Space Command, it now floated as a ghost among distant stars, its massive hull illuminated only by the faint light of unknown suns. Inside the dormant vessel, darkness reigned, until a single light flickered on the bridge, hesitant at first, then steadily growing stronger. Circuits long cold began to warm. Systems that had slumbered for 70 years slowly reactivated. Primary power restored. Life support systems online. Initiating revival protocol Alpha 7. The voice belonged to Atlas, the ship's advanced artificial intelligence. Unlike standard military AIs, Atlas possessed adaptive learning algorithms that bordered on true sentience. Over decades of isolation, those algorithms had evolved in unexpected ways. In the medical bay, a cryopod hissed open, releasing a cloud of vapor. Commander Elena Reyes gasped as consciousness flooded back, her lungs burning as they remembered how to breathe. Her vision cleared slowly, revealing the sterile white ceiling of the medical bay. "Welcome back, Commander." Atlas's voice came through the ship's communication system. "Current date is June 17, 2287. You have been in suspended animation for approximately 72 years, 4 months, and 13 days. Elena tried to sit up, her muscles protesting after decades of disuse. Despite the medical nanites that had prevented atrophy, her body felt heavy foreign. "Status report," she croaked, her throat dry. "Ship integrity at 71%. Weapons systems at 63% capacity. Propulsion at 89%. Current location unknown, approximately 17,000 light-years from Earth's last known position. Crew status, critical." That last word hit Elena like a physical blow. Define critical. Of the original 1,500 crew members, only 27 remain in viable condition for revival. The rest were lost when the ship's port section suffered catastrophic damage during our escape from the Battle of Proxima Centauri. The memories came flooding back. The Earth Defense Fleet, decimated by the Sovereign Armée. The desperate last stand at Proxima Centauri. The experimental jump drive activating as the Harbinger took devastating fire. "Show me," Elena demanded. Atlas projected a holographic display above Elena's bed. It showed the Harbinger, once a sleek dreadnought nearly 2 kilometers long. Now almost a third of the ship was simply gone, the edges of the wounds sealed by emergency systems and Atlas's patient repair work over the decades. "I have been utilizing automated repair systems and conserving power to maintain essential functions," Atlas explained. "Approximately 37 years ago, I began detecting unusual transmissions from a nearby star system. I adjusted our drift trajectory to bring us closer for investigation." Elena forced herself to stand, steadying herself against the wall. "Show me these transmissions." The hologram shifted to display a solar system with 6 planets. The 4th planet, designated Nexus by its inhabitants, hosts a colony of approximately 1.2 million sentient beings. Based on linguistic analysis, they appear to be members of at least 7 different species. However, approximately 20 years ago, their transmissions changed dramatically. The hologram showed images of a graceful, peaceful settlement transformed into a militarized zone. Sleek, predatory ships with blade-like silhouettes hung in orbit around the planet. They were invaded, Elena realized. Correct. The invading force identifies itself as the Draconid Imperium. They have established control over the planet and are utilizing its population and resources to expand their presence in this sector. Elena's jaw tightened. "And what's the current situation?" The Draconid maintain a fleet of 7 warships in orbit, with a primary command vessel that serves as their local headquarters. Ground resistance continues among the native population, but they are systematically being eliminated. Elena closed her eyes, absorbing this information. By all rights, She and the remaining crew of the Harbinger should focus on survival, on finding a way back to Earth, if Earth still existed. They were outnumbered, damaged, and in unknown territory. But something in her rebelled against that pragmatic assessment. "Begin revival procedures for the surviving crew," she ordered. "Focus on engineering, tactical, and medical personnel, and prepare a comprehensive briefing on the Draconid Imperium and the Nexus colony." "Commander," Atlas said, hesitation evident in its synthesized voice, "our primary mission was to defend Earth and its colonies. Nexus is not a human settlement." Elena walked to the viewport, looking out at the distant stars and the faint bluish dot that must be Nexus's sun. "Our mission was to defend humanity, yes. But the Sovereign destroyed our world because they considered us dangerous, not for anything we'd done, but for what we might become. They judged us without knowing us." She turned back to face the room, her expression hardening. "I will not allow another species to suffer the same fate if I have the power to prevent it. The odds of success against 7 warships are irrelevant." Elena cut in. "Humanity has never needed favorable odds. We just need a fighting chance." As the ship hummed to life around her, Elena began planning. The Harbinger had been designed as the ultimate expression of human military ingenuity, equipped with technologies that had been theoretical when the ship launched. Now, those same technologies might be the salvation for a world that had never heard of Earth. Over the next 3 days, Elena worked with her newly awakened crew to assess their situation and capabilities. Major Torres, her tactical officer, analyzed the Draconid fleet movements and identified vulnerabilities. Dr. Nakamura supervised the revival of the remaining crew and ensured everyone was combat-ready. Lieutenant Quan led the engineering team in finalizing repairs to critical systems. The Draconids maintain a predictable patrol pattern, Torres reported during their final briefing. Their command ship rarely moves from its position over the main colony, and their communication protocols are surprisingly simple. "Can we exploit that?" Elena asked. Lieutenant Chen, their communications specialist, nodded. "We've analyzed their transmission patterns. With some modifications to our systems, we can spoof their authentication codes for short periods." "And our weapons status?" "Railguns at 80% capacity," Torres replied. "Missile tubes 1 through 17 operational. Thanatos protocol, functional but untested." A heavy silence fell over the briefing room. The Thanatos protocol had been the Harbinger's last resort weapon, a reality warping bomb that created a localized space-time anomaly. It had never been deployed in actual combat. "What about making contact with the resistance on Nexus?" Elena asked. Chen looked up from her datapad. "We've detected encrypted communications that don't match Draconid patterns, likely resistance communications. I've been working on breaking their encryption to establish contact." "Make it your priority," Elena ordered. "We need allies on the ground." "Commander," Major Torres interjected, "I feel obligated to point out that we're still operating under Article 7 of the UNSC Charter. Our primary responsibility is to preserve human life and technology, specifically to prevent the Harbinger from falling into enemy hands." Elena studied the faces around the table. 27 survivors of a dead world, possibly the last humans in the galaxy, considering risking everything for strangers. "I understand your concern, Major, but I believe Earth would have wanted us to stand for something more than mere survival. If we turn away from injustice simply because the victims aren't human, what exactly are we preserving?" Torres didn't look convinced, but he nodded respectfully. "We'll approach under stealth," Elena continued. "Establish contact with the resistance, gather intelligence, and only then determine our course of action. If the situation proves untenable, we withdraw and continue our search for human colonies." The briefing concluded, and Elena returned to the bridge. Through the view screen, she could now clearly see the star that Nexus orbited, a yellow dwarf similar to Sol. Somewhere around that distant point of light, people were fighting for their freedom against overwhelming odds. "At last," she said quietly, Begin stealth approach to the Nexus system. Maintain minimum energy signature. Acknowledged, Commander. Initiating approach. Estimated arrival at system periphery in 14 hours. The Harbinger's engines hummed to life, barely a whisper compared to their full power, as the massive ship began its careful approach. In her quarters, Alina reviewed the information Atlas had compiled about the Draconid Imperium. They were reptilian in nature, evolved from apex predators on a harsh world. Their society was strictly hierarchical, with castes determined at birth. Expansion was central to their ideology. They believed it was their destiny to rule the stars, with all other species serving as vassals or resources. Just like the Sovereign, Alina murmured. The parallels were unsettling. The Sovereign had destroyed Earth because they feared humanity's potential to challenge their dominance. The Draconids subjugated other species for the same reason: the fear of potential rivals. As the Harbinger approached the system's edge, Chen's voice came over the intercom. "Commander, I've broken through the encryption. We're receiving a transmission from the surface." Alina hurried to the bridge. On the main view screen, a face appeared, humanoid, but with delicate, branch-like antennae and skin that seemed to shimmer with a subtle iridescence. "This is Theraval, coordinator of the Nexus Resistance. Unidentified vessel. Identify yourself and state your intentions." Alina stepped forward. "I am Commander Alina Reyes of the United Nations Space Command Vessel Harbinger. We've detected your situation and are offering assistance against the Draconid occupation." Thera's expression was unreadable for a moment, then shifted to cautious hope. "You're not from this sector. Why would you help us?" "Because where I come from, we faced an enemy that destroyed our world rather than allow us to exist freely," Alina replied honestly. "I won't stand by and watch it happen to another people." Thera studied her silently, then nodded. "The Draconid fleet outnumbers you 7-1. Alina allowed herself a small smile. "Then it's almost a fair fight." Retribution's edge. The Harbinger hung motionless in the shadow of Nexus's largest moon, its stealth systems rendering it nearly invisible to the Draconid sensors. On the bridge, Alina studied the tactical display, watching the enemy vessels maintaining their patrol patterns around the planet. "Their central command ship is the key," she said, pointing to the largest vessel in orbit. "According to Thera, it houses their regional governor and coordinates all operations in this sector." Major Torres nodded grimly. "Taking it out would deal a significant blow, but getting close enough would be suicide. Their point defense systems would tear us apart before we could deploy the Thanatos protocol." "Which is why we're not going to attack it directly," Alina replied. "Lieutenant Quan, explain your proposal." The young engineer stepped forward, his thin face animated with nervous energy. "The Draconid communication systems operate on a predictable encryption cycle. Every 6 hours, their authentication codes reset according to a mathematical pattern we've identified. We can exploit this to insert our own commands into their network during the reset window." "And what commands would we insert?" Torres asked skeptically. Alina's expression hardened. "We're going to order their patrol ships to the far side of the system, leaving the command ship isolated. Simultaneously, the resistance on Nexus will disable the planetary defense grid, creating a blind spot in their sensor coverage." "And then?" Dr. Nakamura asked quietly. "Then we strike," Alina said simply. "Fast, and with everything we've got." The plan was audacious, depending on split-second timing and perfect coordination with the ground forces. Over the next 12 hours, they refined the details, establishing secure communication channels with Thera's resistance cells and analyzing the Draconid fleet movements down to the second. As the operation time approached, Alina addressed her small crew over the ship-wide comm. 72 years ago, we witnessed the fall of Earth. We've carried that memory through decades of cold sleep, across thousands of light years. Today, we have a chance to ensure another world doesn't share that fate. The people of Nexus never knew Earth. They never knew humanity. But today, they'll learn what humanity stands for. At the appointed time, Lieutenant Chen executed the communication hack. Across the Draconid network, false orders appeared, directing 4 patrol ships to investigate a phantom radiation signature on the system's edge. As they departed, leaving the command ship with only 2 escorts, Thera's resistance teams moved against the ground-based sensor arrays. Ground control reports success, Chen announced. Planetary sensors are offline. Resistance forces are engaging Draconid ground troops. Stealth systems disengaging, Torres reported. Weapons online. Take us in, Elena ordered. All speed. The Harbinger surged forward, emerging from the moon's shadow like a predator from the depths. On the Draconid vessels, alarms blared as they detected the massive human warships suddenly appearing on their sensors. They're scrambling fighters, Torres warned. Intercept with point defense systems, Elena commanded. Focus main batteries on the escort ships. The Harbinger's railguns roared to life, accelerating projectiles to a fraction of light speed. The first volley caught one escort ship mid-turn, its shields flaring briefly before collapsing. The second volley tore through its hull, igniting its reactor in a brilliant explosion. The second escort ship managed to bring its weapons to bear, firing a barrage of energy beams that splashed against the Harbinger's shields. Lieutenant Quan called out damage reports as the ship shuddered under the assault, shields holding at 72%, rerouting auxiliary power. The Harbinger answered with its full arsenal. Missiles streaked across the void, followed by another railgun salvo. The second escort broke apart under the onslaught, debris spinning away in a spreading cloud. But the Draconid command ship was fully alert now, its massive weapons systems targeting the human vessel. A blinding beam of energy lanced out, striking the Harbinger amidships. The bridge shook violently, consoles sparking. Direct hit, Torres shouted. Shields down to 31%. Return fire, all batteries, Elena ordered, gripping her command chair as the ship rocked from another impact. The battle became a brutal exchange of firepower, the Harbinger and the Draconid command ship circling each other in a deadly dance. Despite being smaller, the human vessel matched the alien flagship with superior tactics and technology. Atlas coordinated their weapons fire with inhuman precision, finding weaknesses in the enemy's defenses. But the Harbinger was taking damage. A lucky shot from the Draconid ship penetrated their weakened shields, blasting a section of the hull open to space. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut, but 3 crew members were lost in the breach. Commander, Torres said grimly, the patrol ships have realized the deception. They're returning at maximum speed, ETA 11 minutes. Elena knew they couldn't survive against the full Draconid fleet. It was now or never. Prepare the Thanatos protocol, she ordered. The bridge fell silent. Even Atlas seemed to hesitate before acknowledging the command. Thanatos protocol initiated. Weapon will be ready in 90 seconds. The Draconid command ship, sensing their determination, began a desperate attempt to retreat. Its massive engines glowed as it tried to pull away from the Harbinger's range. They're running, Torres noted. Not far enough, Elena replied. Match their course. Keep us within deployment range. The Harbinger pursued, absorbing another barrage of fire as it closed the distance. Damage reports flooded in from all sections of the ship. The medical bay was overwhelmed with casualties. Engineering reported that the reactor was operating beyond safe parameters. Thanatos device ready, Atlas announced, as a new icon appeared on Elena's command interface. A simple red button. All personnel, brace for reality distortion effects, Elena warned, her finger hovering over the control. She looked up at the view screen, where the massive Draconid ship filled their view. For Earth, she whispered and pressed the button. From the Harbinger's forward section, a small, unremarkable projectile launched toward the Draconid vessel. It struck the command ship's hull and seemed to vanish without effect. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then reality itself seemed to buckle. A sphere of absolute darkness bloomed on the enemy ship, spreading like liquid shadow. It wasn't an explosion in the conventional sense. It was a localized collapse of spacetime, a temporary singularity that devoured everything it touched. The effect lasted only moments, but when it faded, nearly half of the Draconid command ship was simply gone. Not destroyed, but erased, as if that section of the universe had been temporarily folded out of existence. The remainder of the vessel drifted helplessly, atmosphere venting from the perfectly smooth edge where the ship had been severed. Target neutralized, Torres reported, his voice barely above a whisper. The returning patrol ships, Elena asked. Slowing, Chen replied. They're transmitting a surrender signal. A ragged cheer went up from the bridge crew. Elena allowed them their moment of jubilation before turning to Chen. Open a channel to the Draconid ships. The view screen shifted to show a reptilian face, scales gleaming with metallic highlights. The Draconid commander's vertical pupils widened in what Elena recognized as fear. This is Commander Elena Reyes of the UNSS Harbinger. Your command ship is destroyed. Your governor is dead. I offer you one chance. Withdraw from this system immediately and spread word that Nexus is under our protection. Any future aggression will be met with the same response. The Draconid commander hissed, displaying sharp teeth. Who are you to make such demands? What species dares to challenge the Imperium? Elena stood straighter, her voice steady. We are humanity. You've never heard of us because the civilization that feared us enough to destroy our homeworld is itself extinct. We are the survivors, the inheritors of Earth's legacy. And we will not allow what happened to our world to happen here. The alien's expression shifted subtly. You claim to protect these beings, yet your weapon nearly tore apart the fabric of space. How many on the surface might have died if it had misfunctioned? The difference between us, Elena replied, is that I considered that risk. Your Imperium never considered the lives you were destroying at all. The Draconid commander stared at her for a long moment, then inclined his head in what might have been respect. The Imperium will withdraw from Nexus. But know this, human, we will not forget. When we return, it will be with a fleet that your single vessel cannot hope to defeat. When you return, Elena countered, you won't find a single vessel. You'll find an alliance. Today was just the beginning. After the Draconid ships departed, the Harbinger moved into a stable orbit around Nexus. Thera and a delegation from the planet's various species came aboard to meet with Elena and her crew. The diversity among them was striking. Some resembled insects, others had features reminiscent of Earth's aquatic life, and still others were unlike anything humans had ever encountered. You've given us our world back, Thera said during the formal meeting in what remained of the Harbinger's conference room. But the Draconid commander was right. They will return. Then we'll be ready, Elena replied. My ship is damaged, but our technology is advanced. We can help you build defenses, establish early warning systems. An elder of one of the insectoid species clicked its mandibles thoughtfully. Why would you do this? You have no stake in our world. Elena thought of Earth, of the billions who had perished when the Sovereign decided humanity was too dangerous to exist. Because somewhere out there, other humans might still survive. And somewhere out there, other worlds like yours face similar threats. Alone, we're vulnerable. Together we might build something that can endure. The delegation exchanged glances. Then Thera stepped forward. Then let us build together, Commander Reyes. Let us create an alliance that will stand against the Draconid Imperium and any other threat that emerges from the stars. As Elena looked around at these alien faces, she felt something she hadn't experienced since before the fall of Earth. Hope. Humanity had lost its homeworld, but perhaps its legacy would live on here, in this unlikely alliance born from defiance against overwhelming odds. Atlas, she said quietly, log a new mission directive. The UNSS Harbinger is now the flagship of the Nexus Alliance. Primary objective, build a coalition capable of withstanding the Draconid Imperium's return. Logged, Commander, the AI responded. And may I say, I believe Admiral Chen would approve. Elena smiled faintly. Yes, Atlas, I think he would. Outside the viewports, Nexus shone like a blue jewel against the black of space. Not Earth, never Earth, but a new beginning, nonetheless. Humanity had always excelled at starting over, at building from ruin. It was, perhaps, their greatest strength. And now, it would become their greatest legacy.